Hi 8th graders, and welcome to yet another Monday video. And today we are going to be looking at lessons 27 and 29. This is probably going to be a pretty short and sweet video, but I do want to point out several things. If you want to watch through the video, that's fine. You probably can also pick up this information just by reading. So if you look at each lesson individually, read the gray boxes, and read the samples that they give you, I think you'd probably do okay. But just in case, I am going to go ahead and run through these, and I will also do some class practice, a couple of for each lesson at the end. So let's begin by taking a look at the gray box. This is always my first go-to. And the colon is the two dots like you see right here. A semicolon is the dot and the comma. So the colon separates numbers in scripture. You've probably seen that. Expressions of time, when you write 1 o'clock in Numbers, you would have the colon there. It's also used in a letter. So Dear Aunt Sally, colon. Or to announce something like I would like to present, and then you would have a colon. A semicolon is used instead of a conjunction when you have those independent clauses that you join together. It can also be used to separate an item in a series, and I will give you an example of that in just a second. So let's first take a look at colons. So here's what I was referring to before, the scripture references, Genesis 1:26. There's your colon. You guys have probably learned how to correctly write scripture references, but this is an example. And then in the letter, Dear Emily, colon, I hope you have a good day. So it just shows you some very practical uses for the colon. Here are some others. We see if you are going to use a colon to list off a bunch of things, you could say the chores are as follows. It's almost like that announcement, and then you would list them. The boys who are chosen are, and then I list the boys. And notice I did put the commas between those that we had talked about beforehand. Now, one point that I actually didn't do here, be careful. If you use a colon, be careful that now I'm just listing a series of things. But if you are listing things and then you list a series and you keep going with the sentence, it does all have to make sense. And it has to be a complete thought. So make sure you do that in the case of using the colon. All right, let's look at some examples for semicolons. We are going to use it to replace that conjunction. So if I said the cat ate the mouse, and the dog ate the cheese, if that was my sentence, I could take the and out and put the conjunction in there. So you can do that with two independent clauses. Also, when there are commas that are already being used heavily in a sentence, then you might need a semicolon. So here's an example. We are caring for some pets. There's the colon because we're going to list them. Boots, comma, a Siamese cat. See, I already used a comma there, so I don't necessarily want to use a comma again. So it's a good idea to use the semicolon. Browser, comma, a collie, another semicolon, and Frisky, comma, a Toggenburg goat, which I have no idea what that is. So if you've already got commas kind of popping up a lot, then you might want to think about the semicolon. Okay, let's take a look at lesson 29. See how quickly this is going? Lesson 29 is on dashes, parentheses, and brackets, and these to me are kind of afterthoughts when the English language was being put down on paper. So for lesson 29, we would use a dash. Here's one, but we can also use it in a sentence, like if there's a sudden interruption, or for somebody whose train of thought is kind of all over the place and they're mentioning different things. Then parentheses encloses a parenthetical element. We'll talk about that. And brackets are used when parentheses might already be used in the sentence. So it's kind of like a second set of parentheses. Okay, dashes. Here's a couple of dashes. The car skidded off the road. Well, I kind of want to insert something here. A freezing rain was falling. And then the dash again and into a tree. Now, you can use either the two if you're typing, or sometimes it converts it to just one long one, like it did in these two. So it's kind of, the writer's writing, but they want to put kind of a random thought in. Here's another one. This is so beautiful. Oh, look at the design. I can't believe you would give me this. So it just shows that scattered brain, kind of going different places, and the parentheses are in there. And then finally, back here, it's not parentheses, it's dashes are in there. Okay, parentheses. Adding some information is most commonly how parentheses are used. So mother served the cake, but I want to insert here who brought it. Brought by Grandma, baked by Grandma, purchased by Grandma, whatever. It's added information. I just put it in with parentheses with fresh peaches. We also use it for scripture references. So if I give you a scripture and then I put the reference in, I can do that with parentheses. I could also say God is no respecter of persons, which comes from Acts 10:34. You don't have to use the parentheses, but that is the popular way to insert it. Parenthetical citation is not in your book, but I do want to point that out here, that in your papers, when you are writing a quotation from someone, you will need to put in parentheses where that came from, the reference you have used. So if you tell me something Ben Franklin said and you took it from his autobiography, then you would need to write in parentheses, Franklin, page whatever. And so this is something that is not pointed out in the book, but is something that I commonly use and that you need to use as well. And brackets are used to give clarification when parentheses are also used. So here's an example. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias, who was Elijah, talking with him. And then here parentheses are used. So knowing that I had multiple places where I was possibly using parentheses, I choose to use something else there. All right, let's take a look at class practice for lesson 29. And that is on page 148. So I want you to take a moment. We're just going to do class practice A and take a moment to complete those first 5 or the 5 in class practice A, and then I will give you the answers. So hit pause, do those, and then I will give you the answers. Okay, so if you're back, the answer to number 1, you want to put parentheses around the tall man on the right. So the sentence would read, my uncle, parentheses, the tall man on the right, parentheses ends, will be teaching our class. Number 2, dashes before and after. What a pleasant surprise. So it's kind of remember losing that train of thought there for a minute. Number 3, let's read the sentence. I remember Sister Carolyn, she was my first grade teacher, as being a good disciplinarian. So what we want to do is put dashes before and after. She was my first grade teacher. In number 4, we want to put dashes before and after, even when it seems impossible. And then in 5, we want to put commas before and after, who are all boys. Remember, which clause would get the commas. So hopefully that was short and sweet enough for you, and I will plan on seeing you Wednesday. The test for this chapter is actually going to be something very different. You are going to create a cheat sheet, series of index cards, lap book, poster, something for your notebook that will have these rules so that you can refer to them. You can be creative with this, you can color, you can create a poster, but your test is including these rules from the book that we have learned on all of these kind of punctuation types of things. And you need something that you can keep in your notebook that you can refer back to. And you will be graded on this. It will be out of 100 points. I'm going to be looking for creativity, and I'm going to be looking for you being thorough, that you have most of the rules in there, and that it is something that is useful for the remainder of the year. So I'll talk more about that on Wednesday, and I will see you then.